My first few weeks at St. Olaf College, I started dating a woman who lived on the floor below me. This was a brief romance, and I would attribute it to the confusion, maybe desperation, of 750 18-year-olds moving into a very small and new place all at once without any friends or belongings, desperate to have both. So this girl and I got along well enough, and a month or so into our relationship, she brought me to her house to meet her mom and dad. And she happened to have a very nice house on one of the bays on that lake over there. I don't remember where. I'd grown up more modestly in Waconia. I had nice stuff, but it was all secondhand. And I think I could kind of play rich well. So up to this point, I think I'd kind of tricked her. But as she was walking me through her house, room after room after room, I couldn't hide it anymore. And I just blurted out, "Wow, this is the fanciest house I've ever seen." We had a good weekend. We played tennis in her backyard on her tennis courts. We ate beef tenderloin with her father looking at the lake. We returned to St. Olaf College, and the following weekend she broke up with me. I thought of this after reading our text from Mark as the disciples are marveling over the temple. "Teacher," they say, "this is the fanciest temple that we've ever been in." They don't exactly play it cool, just like I didn't play it cool. But Jesus isn't very impressed with it all. He speaks directly to them. He says, "You see these great buildings?" And he's running his hands along the limestone. Maybe he's sweeping his feet on the marble floors. "You see all this? Not one stone will be left upon another. All will be torn down." I thought my line in that house 20 years ago was bad. But could you imagine if I'd said that? This will all be torn down? For someone to say that about a beautiful home? A couple months ago, I was in another home on Lake Minnetonka, also a beautiful home, but an older home. A smaller home that was much too small for its lot. And the owner told me, "When I go, this will all be bulldozed." It was quite the thing to hear. I couldn't believe that she would admit this so directly, but it was absolutely the truth. It felt a little bit like showing up to church on Ash Wednesday and hearing, "Remember, you are dust, and to dust you shall return." These are awful things to think about. The destruction of a great temple, the destruction of a beautiful home. 3 weeks ago, I was giving Fred and Cal and Walter and Audrey and Brody a ride home from school. And we were on 5th Avenue in Hopkins. And we drove just right by Mitzvah United Church of Christ. Mitzvah had closed 2 years earlier, and since it had closed, on the sign out front, it said, Mitzvah UCC, 134 years of service. The building had been vacant, but on this day, the excavators had come. And Fred and Cal and Walter and Audrey and Brody and I got out of the minivan, and we rose in body and spirit for the postlude at this church. And we watched silently, awestruck, humbled, as the teeth from the excavator ripped through the roof and the walls and the floor of that beautiful church, that beautiful building, all of it turning to rubble that would be hauled away and then covered with grass seed, all of it gone. How quickly all of this can vanish, how quickly a church can just vanish and become only a room in your imagination. That was the place where we memorialized Dad when he died, or That was the place where we welcomed our baby into the world. Or that was the place where I went when my heart was broken and my heart was mended. These things happen in churches, but sometimes they go away. I was visiting an elderly member from Mitzvah a week or so after this, and I told her about all of this with tenderness. And as I told her, her eyes filled with tears. Not one stone will be left upon another. All will be torn down. So these readings this Sunday, they are hard ones. April, you got a hard, bloody reading. They are immense and bloody and apocalyptic. They are not usual fare for mannerly, sophisticated people like us who maybe spend time in homes on Lake Minnetonka or worship at a nice church right on Lake Minnetonka. These are weird readings. These are the kind of readings that wacko cults gather around, wearing sackcloth and ashes as they descend into their bunkers holding candles. These are strange, strange texts. But it's a strange, strange time. It's November 17th, 2024. Maybe seeing a beautiful church bulldozed makes these readings seem less extreme. It happens. It could happen to us. It could have happened to us 5 years ago or 3 years ago. It could still happen to us. Everything is very vulnerable. And maybe the temple in this story stands for something more than religion. Maybe it stands for the foundations of an entire culture and society. I was grocery shopping at Costco yesterday, and I noticed they were selling great big buckets of emergency food rations. You buy the bucket, and it'll stay good for 25 years. Can you imagine the peace of mind that would offer, knowing that you've got an emergency food bucket, chicken Alfredo, chicken teriyaki, macaroni and cheese? These are tense times. So much has changed. 4 years ago, supporters of the president descended upon the Capitol saying they were going to hang the vice president. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe they were kidding. I don't know what's a joke anymore. Everything seems so surreal. If you were to write out everything that has transpired over the past 5 or 10 years and then go back in time and deliver it to someone 30 years ago, everything that has happened, everything that's happened to our country, our churches, society, culture, technology, if you were to show this to people, I think they'd say, there's no way. But here we are, November 17th, 2024. Jesus seems unsurprised by all of this. His lack of surprise isn't that apathy that some people wear like a warm old coat, heartless, hopeless cynicism. In our text, he's just acknowledging truths, that buildings break, empires end, many people are led astray, and all the while we are alarmed. But Jesus says, don't be alarmed. And maybe he stands right next to us as we watch all of this happen, and he puts his hand upon our back and says those two simple, comforting words. I know. I know. Jesus knows. But how does he know? This morning, if I had been one of Jesus' disciples, after he utters this into the microphone, these dire predictions of what will happen, I'd have stuck my finger into his chest and said, why are you saying this? Don't you care? And what's your plan? And then I would have gone searching for some other leaders who could have offered me some plan to fix everything. Because Jesus doesn't have a plan. I'd have left him, but maybe all of you would have stayed with him and followed him. Maybe you would have followed him all the way to Golgotha, to the cross, to that awful place where even the most frightening words beside the reality of his suffering just sound like nursery rhymes. Jesus' plan, if we can call it that, is his blood. Because you imagine a person dying upon a cross, and that makes all this stuff not matter. Normally, these things do matter. We spend our whole lives thinking about this stuff if we aren't aware of the fragility of our existence, if we aren't aware of the cross. But we don't think about this because, as Paul says, the cross is a stumbling block. Death is offensive and disgusting, and it doesn't make sense. But as our lives are in peril, we have to go there. And if you go there, if you follow Jesus to the cross, you will see his blood. And you'll see that his blood is like yours and his fate is like yours. We're all going to die. And this reality makes minor significance of every man-made thing, every legacy, every empire. This is too much to absorb, though. If one of you had rescued me at the last minute and then brought me to the cross to be near to Jesus, I think I would have turned around and tried to flee too. Because all of it is so overwhelming and hopeless, I feel like giving in to that cult of meaninglessness that is already bulldozing everything else. But somehow, in the midst of this meaninglessness, in the midst of destruction, as he is upon the cross, Jesus speaks to us. He speaks to us and he draws us together. He draws together people who are not family, who might be strangers, and he says, "Child, here is your mother." He says, "Mother, here is your child." And as the world is crumbling, as our beliefs are dismantled, Jesus gives us a new commandment that we are to love one another just as he has loved you. And so in the early church, in this reading from Hebrews, even today, this command is carried forth. Paul writes today, the good stuff that April read, "Let us consider how to provoke one another to love and good deeds." How to provoke one another to love and good deeds. Paul continues, "Not neglecting to meet together, as is the habit of some," everybody who's not in church this morning, "not neglecting to meet together, but meeting and encouraging one another, all the more as you see the day approaching." So this is the plan for Jesus' self-giving, self-sacrificial love, that we should love one another as Christ has loved you. That's the plan. And it doesn't offer any insurance for buildings or bureaucracies or bodies. I'm not sure if this plan could save a country or a church. But somewhere else, Jesus says something along the lines of, those who lose their life for my sake will gain it. And I don't know what that means. But I wonder if all of us remain near the cross together. I wonder if we could discover what that means. Amen.